He was very familiar with, what he called him, the old guy or big old guy. When he would make this call, it would come up to the riverbank making all kinds of noise and throwing branches around. And that's kind of similar to what I had happen to me later on. It's all flooded most of the year, and it's really only accessible like certain times a year, especially during hunting season. As one year you can get in there, the water's low enough to be able to at least walk around and hunt. It's kind of like a little island that's all surrounded by water and slough. So sitting on this field, with all surrounded by water, can't really see anything at this moment. I can start to hear something walking from the other side of this little slough. And 2 minutes, 3 minutes go by, I can still kind of hear it walking. And slowly I hear whatever it is enter the opposite side of the bayou, kind of coming towards us on the other side in this little island. And by this time, I've already looked at my buddy that's, 25 yards on the opposite side of me. So I'm kind of closer to whatever the creature is. I turn around and I'm looking at him, and his eyes are huge. And he's like, "What is that?" So it, proceeds to come, further through the water, comes up to the other side. There's like a little embankment. And as soon as it comes out that embankment, you just hear dripping. So I'm like, "Oh my God, what is this? This is big. This is big."
I'd like to welcome David to Bigfoot Crossroads. Man, this is kind of a weird one for me. How you came to be on Bigfoot Crossroads is a pretty crazy story. I guess a while back I had Alexander Pedikov on. He's a filmmaker, makes documentaries about Bigfoot for small town monsters. And as the legend goes, he was going to work on a film in the Honey Island Swamp, and you had listened to that episode and heard him talking about it, and then reached out to him when he just happened to be in the Honey Island Swamp area making the film that he talked about on that episode.
Right. Yeah, crazy coincidence and timing for sure.
Yeah. Synchronicity at its finest.
Yeah. And the funniest thing about it was he had done, because he had some issues trying to make a plan for his trip here whenever we found out that that we had some high water situations that he wasn't able to get into the swamp.
Yeah.
So he's like, okay, well, I'm going to head out to another part of the state and do some more research. And I guess in that amount of time, I was able to DM him on Instagram and say, hey man, I heard this podcast that you're on. And I think it was probably 2 months had been recorded, 2 or 3 months before.
Yeah.
I just happened to hear it, driving in the car one day. And I was like, well, shoot, I'm just going to send this guy a message, and see if he gets back to me. And I don't even think it was maybe 12 hours. I'm like, holy crap. He got back to me. And then as I'm reading it, he's like, wow, I can't believe you heard that. I don't even remember mentioning anything about the Honey Island, really. And I think because at the time I had a job where I did deliveries. So I was like, oh my God, I need to pull over right now and message him before I even forget. So yeah, it was kind of funny.
There was a couple things that really interested me about your story. So let's just get right into it. I doubt all the listeners have seen the Honey Island Swamp Monster documentary that Alex did. So if you don't mind just kind of going through your story for me.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess, my first kind of experience I had was I think about 2017, and all of my experiences have been, centered around hunting and fishing. So, I mean, that's usually the reason why, I'm in the swamp or in that area. So, and actually, whenever we did a little bit of filming that night, or we did the interview actually, like in the area that I had one of the experiences, and we ended up not really doing too much that night because, I mean, it was like we were getting destroyed by mosquitoes. You know what I mean? It was pretty intense. But so that time I was coming back from a little hunting trip, bow hunting, and I was leaving. So we have this wildlife management area that we all, kind of hunt in this area. Pretty well known. Pearl River Wildlife Management Area is kind of the most well known one that we hunt. And so I'm just going to the main launch, where you can get into the river and then go on to where you're going to hunt. And I'm leaving out that afternoon after a little hunt and just driving along the main road, going pretty slow because, rock road and whatnot. And all of a sudden I kind of noticed out of the corner of my eye just something veering toward, coming towards my truck out of the woods, and then bam, loud branch hits the side of the truck. I stop, get out. I look around. I'm like, okay, nothing's really, going on. I'm gonna get back in my car. Kind of adrenaline started pumping. I was like, that was really strange. Like, I didn't know where that came from. Ended up taking a wrong turn out of this little launch area, getting my truck stuck. And so it turned into a whole big ordeal, and ended up calling my buddy. I was like, hey man, like something kind of weird happened to me today. And he's like, you know what it is? And like, he's always messing with me. Like, is that swamp monster? You know what I mean? Cause like, he knows I'm in there all the time hunting, but he doesn't really buy into it very much, but he just likes to mess with me. I guess he gets that. And, so that was like one of the first times I had something really strange happen to me. And I guess like started to think, okay, maybe there's something out there that we don't really know. And so a couple years later, kind of my main experience that I talked about a lot with Alec was in the area where my uncle had spent a lot of time hunting, and he kind of showed me the area. So that's why I got, really familiar with it and started spending a lot of time there. And when he would hunt, back in the late 80s and early 90s, he would spend the night in the swamp. I guess they didn't have as many rules as they do nowadays, where you have to be in and out of areas at certain times. Yeah. So he said he would set up in the swamp, or he would even build like a little blind and be able to keep his spot. Being public land, you kind of have to hold on to your spot. You might have somebody else come in and try and, take your spot from you if it's a good spot. Yeah. So he said, you can imagine spending, 24 hours in the swamp, overnight, the things that you would hear and possibly see, and he got, to the point that he was staying out there. I think he would say, 4 or 5 days a week, during hunting season. So he was pretty much living out there. And this one area he said he would always go to that he could, at a certain time of year, certain time of night, he would always have, loud calls and, where, you could hear things moving around in the bushes. And he even would do like this one loud call that was, very much like, I would say like a kind of like a chimpanzee type, like aggressive, kind of, not so much like an elongated call like you're used to, that you hear a lot of people doing, like in on TV or anything like that. It's more of like kind of a barking kind of, I guess, kind of ape call. And I can remember one time we were, because he would travel all over the country, and I wouldn't see him too often, but he would come in town for, Thanksgiving or this, that, or the other, and we'd be, talking about hunting and all the different stories that he would have. And I can remember one time he did the call inside of my grandmother's house. And, I mean, I swear she kicked him out quicker than, he about finished that call. She said, yeah, I told you can't be doing that in my house, blah, blah, blah.
Wasn't having it.
No, wasn't having it. But, yeah, he was very familiar with, what he called him, the old guy or big old guy, So, I mean, he didn't even really have like a formal, I guess, name like we do, for it. But, Yeah. And then he had stories as well as bringing my aunt out there, and she said, I mean, there's something out there. And when he would make this call, it would come up to the riverbank and be making all kinds of noise and, throwing branches around. And that's kind of similar to what I had happen to me later on, just a couple years ago.
Yeah.
So when he told me that, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I guess I never thought it would really happen, to me at least. So, but, and that story kind of started with me and my buddy going duck hunting. I would say it's about 1.5 miles, 2 miles from the area that my uncle, said that he would have this, kind of regular action, or interaction. But the area it's all flooded most of the year, and it's really only accessible like certain times a year, especially during hunting season. Is one year you can get in there and the water's low enough to, to be able to at least walk around and hunt. And we walked, say, maybe 1/2 mile or so from the parking lot, which the parking lot's, really deep into the swamp. I mean, you're probably driving for 20 minutes, on just rock roads. So this area that we go, it's kind of like a little island that's all surrounded by water and slough. Really, really good place for duck hunting,
Yeah.
And I've hunted there, 3 or 4 years in a row. Really, the only thing I ever see there is, occasional deer. We see lots of pigs. We have lots of wild pigs down here, so we see those all the time. And we don't really ever have any strange reactions from them. It's usually, oh, they're running away. It's not any type of like violent, or scary encounters, how some people talk about.
Right.
But this particular time when I was with my buddy Gavin, it was funny because it was actually the first time he had ever been hunting. So he kind of like, you think he doesn't have any idea what's going to be like. So we're sitting on this field, with all surrounded by water. I'd say it's about 20 minutes before shooting light. So can't really see anything at this moment. And, I can start to hear something walking from the other side of this little slough, kind of taking its time. So I'm like, okay, like, I don't know what that is, but I'm sure it'll just, make its way through. And 2 minutes, 3 minutes go by, I can still kind of hear it walking. I'm like, okay, like, it's really taking its time. Like, usually a deer or a pig would have noticed this by now and taken off. And slowly I hear whatever it is enter like the opposite side of the bayou, kind of coming towards us on the other side in this little island. I was like, geez, like whatever this is, like really. And by this time I've already like looked at my buddy that's, 25 yards on the opposite side of me. So I'm kind of closer to whatever the creature is. And I mean, if I couldn't see his eyeballs at nighttime, like I'd be lying. But I turn around and I'm looking at him and his eyes are huge. And he's like, what is that? And I mean, I don't know, bud. Like, I have no idea. So it, proceeds to come, further through the water, comes up to the other side. There's like a little embankment. And as soon as it comes out that embankment, I mean, you just hear dripping. So I'm like, oh my God, what is this? Like, this is big. Like, this is big. And so you hear it dripping on the leaves, and then it's kind of walking up the embankment. And then I just, rack my shotgun, just kind of make a little noise. Like,
right.
Who knows? I mean, this could be a hunter, maybe. I don't know why he doesn't have a light on, or, usually, by this time, like you would have a light or something, or you wouldn't have swam through, a bayou at this point in the dark.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's 30 degrees out. Like, this doesn't make any sense. And, and they say we have black bear down here. I don't know. I still don't think like that would, even if it were a black bear, I feel like as soon as it knew we were there, it would have hightailed the opposite direction, right?
Yeah, I would think so.
Right. And, and everyone that I've talked to since then, they're like, yeah, I mean, that doesn't sound like any behavior of like any normal animal. So, we hear it coming up the side of the embankment, water dripping off of it. And, then we start to hear it breathing.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. I'm like, this can't be, this can't be, like, because it was like everything that kept happening. I'm like, it was checking a box to say, okay, this isn't what I think it is.
Yeah.
And so at that point, we start to hear that, and we had already been talking. So whatever this is probably knows we're there. I mean, we're not that far, maybe 30 yards, and it's a side of like this field. So when you kind of go into the little bayou, there's a lot of trees right there. So it could be hanging out right there. We couldn't see it anyway. So I just decided I'm just going to, kind of re-rack my shotgun again. And it's so loud, whatever it is, takes off, goes back into the bayou, either runs into a massive tree or picks something up, throws it our direction, and then proceeds to kind of curve around the side of the field and run off through the woods like the loudest thing I've ever heard. We probably could hear it for a good 20 seconds before it kind of, maybe the wind picked up and we didn't really hear it anymore. But
like breaking limbs and stuff.
Breaking limbs. I mean, breaking limbs. I mean, you could kind of almost physically feel it. Maybe like impacting the ground. I don't know if that's like your heart beating at that point or what, but I mean, I swear I could feel like a difference of more weight, I guess you could say, like contact from the ground than just like a deer or something like that,
Whenever you heard it coming through the water, did it sound like a person on two legs, or did it sound, could you tell?
It sounded exactly like if you were to wade through the water, just like if you were to take your time kind of wading through the water and then, coming up the other side and, taking its time. It wasn't in a rush, it was kind of like difficult, because I was just like, okay, could this thing, whatever it is, just pass through? But it was like, I mean, probably the entire kind of thing probably lasted 3 or 4 minutes because it was taking it so much time walking on the opposite side of the little slough before it came through, and then it took off running the opposite direction. But yeah, so it was just like, I just had never experienced anything, like that.
No, I would think not. Did your friend ever go hunting again?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, like he realized that like I wasn't like hightailing it at that point, picking my bags up and like walking to the car. I think he realized that I wasn't, and I at no point in time felt like I wasn't in fear really, in the sense of like something bad was going to happen. It was just like wrong place, the wrong time, I guess, type of thing,
Just knew whatever was happening wasn't right.
Right. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I've seen packs of pigs come through the swamp, and I mean, it's nowhere near like what this sounded like, what like a herd of pigs sounds like versus like, breaking branches and just, I mean, it was just so loud. I don't know. It was like,
have you heard like other stories from other people outside of, you and your uncle in that area?
Yeah. And that's kind of the weird part about like, once I contacted Alec and then kind of was like, well, this is like a cool community. Like, let me just kind of start trying to ask people, it didn't take me very long. I literally asked one guy that I worked with that grew up in Pearl River, and he's like, oh, you hunt out there? He's like, yeah, you need to be careful. I'm like, please tell me. I was like, don't say what you're about to say right now. Cause I was just, I just thought it was funny, how quick he was about to say, you don't not be hunting in there.
Yeah.
His story was from when he was, I think he said when he was like 15 or 16 was the last time he had hunted in there with his dad. And I think they were hunting a little bit further north in Boca Chica, which it's kind of all the same areas connected. Boca Chica is just a little bit further north on the Pearl River. But he said they were hunting one morning, and he happened to look over and he asked his dad, like, oh, do you see that guy over there? And as soon as he got his dad to look over there, the guy was gone. And he said, it was like up on top of a ridge, kind of like had been, looked like it was peeking around a bush or a tree. And that was it. As soon as he turned his head, it was gone. That was really, the only story that he had, other than saying, obviously it's super well known, around here. Not too many people are going to not have heard at least one or two stories, through the years, I would think.
And is the whole area like public hunting area?
Yeah, the whole area. I think all combined around like 60 to 70,000 acres.
Wow.
So it's not necessarily very wide. It's about 6 to 7 miles wide, but then extends along the Mississippi and Louisiana border for like 40 or 50 miles at least in this area, this section.
Wow. I mean, you've mentioned, deer and ducks, obviously. Do you guys have like just open season on hogs there too?
For like in public land, they still have, your kind of season, open and closed season. Just because, if you had a bunch of public land and a bunch of, open public land in Louisiana all year round, that would be kind of crazy. A lot of people running around with guns at that point.
Yeah.
But for the most part, there's no limit, I guess you could say. Like
right.
During that time of year, if you could kill 100, you'd be doing them a favor. You know what I mean?
I don't know if it's the same that it used to be, but I know at one point in time here in Oklahoma, they were, such a nuisance animal, doing so much damage that it was just no season. There is always season for hogs. You can take one anytime you want, day or night.
Right.
But I didn't know if it was like that there. Is there like a time of the year whenever there's not hunting going on in this area?
Yeah. So it's mainly from October to February will be like the block or the time of year when most of the people are going to be there. Other than that, not too many people are going to spend too much time in the swamp.
Yeah. So pretty much deer and ducks.
Yeah, deer, ducks. A lot of squirrels, small game. You can still. There's a lot of fishing as well in the area because it's all it's all good river systems. Yeah, that's mainly what I do is deer and duck hunting there, and pigs as well. There's lots of those running around always. And I think it was about a week after I had gotten in touch with Alec and we had hung out and done a little interview. I had heard from a buddy of mine that his mom had passed away. So I was like, okay, well, shoot, let me, I can get some dinner together and I'll come and bring it by one night. And I went and stopped by there and he was, asking me how my season has gone, hunting wise. And I was showing him some pictures and whatnot. And he was saying, you're still in there in that swamp, huh? Cause he hunts private land now. And he's like, yeah, man, I really love it out there. He's like, well, I got a couple stories for you if you want to hear them. I'm like, oh, buddy. I was like, as soon as he said that, the hair on the back of my neck raised up. I'm like, I know what he's about to tell me too. And he said a group that he used to hunt with, he wasn't in the group at the time, but a group that he used to hunt with had, got a party together. And in this area, they have, especially, 15, 20 years ago, they had tons of houseboats that would moor on the side of the river during hunting season. You can hop out of your houseboat and go hunting. You don't have to travel too far. So they had a group of guys that were set up, hunting for the weekend, and they had all their gear, outside of the cabin, and they had heard some loud banging. They came out and all their stuff had just been thrown all over the place. They're like, well, that's weird. Like, I don't think any other hunters are trying to get shot tonight, like probably not a good idea to be running around other camps, throwing people's stuff around. And the following day, somebody in the camp had shot a doe. And when he went to go blood trail it, he, blood trailed it and found it, saw it going into a thicket, said, well, maybe I should go get some help. Went and got a couple guys and they came back and, I guess they were approaching the thicket or starting to walk into it. And next thing they knew, the carcass of the deer was being thrown over top of them and landed outside of the thicket. I think from there they, picked up and ran out, and probably didn't hunt that area anymore. But
the deer was thrown?
Yeah, thrown out of the thicket. Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy. I've never heard that one before. That would freak me out, man. That would freak me completely out to see a deer carcass flying through the air.
Oh, yeah. I mean, because a lot of these, guys have no idea any of this type of stuff,
Yeah.
I think, some of the people that hunt out there nowadays, they'd be like, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't go in that thicket. It's probably better to not go in that thicket if a deer went in there, It's not worth my life, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think if you see a deer flying through the air, you figure it out real quick, though.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I mean, I can't imagine.
So, like, I want to back up to your original story about the stick hitting your truck. So, was that during daylight that happened?
Yeah, it was about 3:00 in the afternoon. I had been hunting most of the day, and then I can't remember why, if I had work that night, and I was coming in and riding down this rock road, and I can remember actually thinking like my trailer was making a bunch of noise on this little rock road, just bouncing up and down. It was annoying me.
Mm-hmm.
And then next thing I know, I just kind of like looked to my side, out of my peripheral vision, and about the size of a baseball bat, maybe 6 foot long, just smashes right off of where my rear view mirror is, and I stopped. And
so right there next to you.
Yeah, right there. Yeah, right there next to me.
And like you caught like the movement of it going through there. So what I'm getting at is it wasn't like a dead limb that fell from a tree. It was actually going sideways through the air at your truck.
Right. Yeah. That's the only way that I could imagine, I can't foresee me catching in my peripheral vision if it were coming from the top. Yeah. And kind of like where it is, it's kind of like the road's kind of like a levee.
Uh-huh.
So you're driving through the swamp at that time. So like off either side is like sawgrass, tall sawgrass and palmettos, and I mean super, super thick. So if something was down in there,
you don't even have like trees hanging over the road or anything.
No.
Oh wow. Yeah, that would rule out the dead limb theory in a hurry.
Right.
Did you like stop the truck and get out and everything?
Yeah, stopped the truck and got out, and was just kind of, I mean, the most odd part about it was the fact that I could see it coming. That's what, if it hit the top of the truck or if it fell on the hood or something, I would have been like, oh, that was weird, and go pick it up and throw it off the side of the road and, keep going.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just like how, I don't know, I guess how like, how much I got scared was the part that like made me second guess, like, whoa, what exactly was that? Like, yeah, it was really strange.
Hit the truck pretty good. Did it leave any marks or anything?
No, that I can remember. I mean, it busted. So, I mean, it was like which was strange. I think it was a pine tree, and there was no pine trees around, or really anywhere, even on that side of the swamp, there's really not a lot of pine trees. So, I mean, and there's always, the water comes up and down. So wood floats all over the place, and you might find a pine tree log, 10 miles from an actual pine tree, 'cause they're always, floating around, I guess. I mean, that could, be why it would be in that area, but
that wouldn't explain why it was flying through the air at your truck.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No. And just, and then getting my truck stuck afterwards was like, I mean, it was like the icing on top of it.
I mean, what better timing,
Yeah.
Well, just for your own peace of mind, I want to let you know that you're not the first person who's had their vehicle hit by a limb as they're driving down a road out in the middle of nowhere.
Okay. Yeah. Because I've never really heard of it. I mean, other than, kind of like piecing it together in my mind, like what it could possibly be. Like I had never really, that I can think of, other than people, having stories about rocks being thrown at them. I've heard, those stories, I guess. But
Yeah, I know a couple of people that's had their vehicles hit with tree limbs as they were driving out of an area.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense if they were mad or they didn't want you there.
So your uncle, the thing that really grabs my attention about your uncle is the fact that he was going out there and making calls. Because that's something that the group of people that I was associated with back whenever I was going out actively looking for these things, their whole claim to fame was they would do calls. And they were the first people that I was ever around that did calls. And it wasn't really like an accepted thing to even do calls out in the woods like it is now for, Bigfoot researchers.
Right.
So did your uncle ever say why he used that call? Is that something he developed on his own? Is it something he heard?
Yeah, for him, I mean, it was a mimic from what he had heard, honestly, like, I mean, he's like a smoker, so, and he's got some health issues, but I mean, I've never, of all the people that I've ever heard do a call like on TV or anything, I mean, this man has got it. If I can say that, I mean, and it had to have been because he's heard it. Yeah, when he would belt this call out, I mean, it would almost make you like, come to tears, like it was so scary. Like, and if you were to hear that in the woods, no, I would probably be one of these people that sold all their hunting equipment and never stepped foot in there again. Golly.
Did he always go to the same spot to do it?
Yeah, so like the area that they have, it's an old highway that used to run from Pearl River to Picayune, Mississippi, and they had a bridge that washed out at the Mississippi-Louisiana line, and they've just left it washed out for, I don't know, 50 or 60 years now. And that's like the border for the wildlife management area is the state line on that side. And he would go to the edge of this bridge and make these calls. And he said that the creature would come to the opposite side of the riverbank, breaking branches and, screaming and all, the whole thing, and,
yeah,
he would, did it multiple times that he would go there because he brought my aunt out there, once, and she said she would never go back.
Do you know how he found that spot?
It's just a really popular spot because you can park your truck there and you can walk down and get to the river. And a lot of people can go down there and launch like little pirogues and whatnot. So I'm not exactly sure how he stumbled upon having the encounters there.
Right.
I'm not exactly sure if he maybe was hunting in the area and had a sighting and then figured I'll go back here, maybe if he wanted to, which to me, I can't imagine ever going to like poke the beast, I guess you could say, if I knew where he lived. But I mean, he always called him the big guy. So he said he knew where he lived, and, and it was right around this old bridge that had washed out on the river.
Yeah. I bet your uncle knew a lot more than he let you know about.
Yeah. And there was a few times that we went and camped out there, and he would fall asleep like a baby out there, and he would wake me up, he would wake up and be like, "You okay? Like, anything happen?" I'm like, "No, we're okay. We're okay." And then he would doze back off, So yeah, you could definitely tell that he was nervous, but he'd still, enjoy being out there.
Why do you think your grandma ran him out of the house? Why didn't she like the call?
Because it was almost sounded like it was about to break the windows. I mean, it was like this. I mean, I tried to do it when, because Alec asked me about it, and I tried to do it, and I felt like, it wasn't anywhere near like what he does. And it's probably, it's been probably 10, 15 years since I've heard him do it, but it's ingrained in my brain, how he made that call. And it's nothing like I've heard anyone else do, on any type of TV show or anything like that. It seems more like something he would have had to have heard to come up with,
Well, man, thanks for coming on and sharing your stuff. You got an interesting story. Are you still going out there? Have you ever thought about trying to, go out to the bridge and do a call yourself or anything?
I really haven't. I mean, I wish like I could almost maybe find something like a recording that's similar, to try, maybe try and do that, because it's such a, such a like difficult for me to even make any of those types of noises, I guess you could say. Yeah, like, I guess it's hard. Like you kind of, I mean, like when I tried to do it, I guess it kind of felt silly at first. And then I was like, all right, now I need to really try. But yeah, still wasn't able to do it very well.
Yeah, I used to practice in my car, just driving around with the windows up, trying to do Bigfoot calls. And one time I looked over and there, at a stoplight, and the lady was giving me a funny look. So I quit doing it.
I mean, that's probably not too strange now with all these TikTok dancers and what else they got going on.
Probably not.
But yeah, I've never really thought about, kind of doing my own research. Maybe just hope something would happen, through the time I spend in the woods, during hunting. But, after these 2 experiences, coming on the podcast and then being able to hang out with Alec, I mean, it's like a pretty cool community to get, into. So I might need to start doing some stuff.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. If you're into it, I mean, there's a lot of other outdoorsmen too, people that are into hunting and fishing that are, into Bigfoot. It kind of goes hand in hand with one another, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like the community, a good community, especially if you've had some sort of experience, because it seems like a lot of people still are worried about seeming like you're crazy, people thinking you're crazy or what it might be, But yeah, I've definitely broken down the stigma, at least in my family. I mean, I've got like my sister, my brother, and they're all like, oh, I can't believe, this is so exciting. Like, and watch the YouTube video with Alec and stuff. So that was a cool experience.
Have you ever experienced anything paranormal or seen a UFO or anything?
Not that I know of. I mean, I've seen some, in crazy, I guess meteors, but who knows if they're, UFO related or what. But I mean, spending some time out in the, in the marsh at nighttime with no lights, you see some crazy shooting stars that make you wonder, you know what I mean?
Yeah. You always end up seeing a lot of crazy stuff out in the woods at night, regardless of what you're looking for. And if you've had a run-in with your own swamp monster or something else you can't explain, send me an email at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. If you get a chance, check out the website, bigfootcrossroads.com. You can find links to social media, a contact form, merchandise, old episodes, everything you need, all in one place. And until next time, remember, there's something in the woods.